why these variables are no longer available to us and why we, in the last video, got this bad request key error issue when we tried to look for a username in request.form. So let's think about it. Even though we've added all these extra layers, at the end of the day, these are just functions, right? And from studying your algorithms, do any functions ever know really anything about the other functions that are happening, even if they're in the same file? No. Right? If we T-diagram this out, each of these functions would have their own T-diagrams, and just because we have something here doesn't mean that we have it available here. So what we need to do is be able to save information or remember things between requests. So by default, requests are stateless, meaning each request that we make is independent of every other request that we make. So this is where session comes into play. We'll talk about databases later, which are another type of persistence. But for now, let's talk about session. So the way we set it up is by first we need to import it from Flask. Different frameworks will work with session differently. Know that Flask uses cookies to handle session. And then we'll need to have a secret key. So let's just add that. Again, it has to become after app, right? Because we're adding a property to our Flask instance that is secret key and giving it a secret value. And then when we want to save something, right, when we want to save information, we can save it in session. And so here, when we are adding our user information, maybe we'll want to add this piece where we can save the information. And remember, this is coming from the form. So it has to match what's in the form, where, just like right here. So when we save them, now in this second method, we will be able to reference not the request.form, but we can reference session. And session is saved across different requests. So instead of referring to session, we want to refer to those. And then let's make sure we're using the right keys. So here we use username, which is good, and we use the key name user email, so that's what we need to use here. And then we'll be able to, on our info, remember we can use these words, the name and the EM for email, on our page. So I think I still have it running. Let's test it out. So if I go back to show, there's nothing there right now because there's nothing in session. So let's go back to here. Let's add my dog again. And now we're able to see it. And if we refresh, that's still in session. Even if we go back to this form, if we go back to show, that's still in session because it's being saved across different requests. And so that's what session allows us to do, is save that information. As another note, we don't actually have to send them up if they're in session. We can actually, and this part of the platform shows us that we are able to actually render them directly on our template by referring to them as session and then the correct key name. So if we wanted to refer to it that way, we can also do that for session particularly. Other variables we'd want to send over, but if we're referring to things in session, we can refer to them directly on our HTML. So notice if I refresh this page, it still shows.